Yeah. I think what struck me about this is her voice hasn't really changed that much,
Yeah. Yep.
which is quite impressive.
Nor has
Just
her
about,
vocal style. Like her sound is there, and so is this sort of mysterious kind of a breathy approach that she has.
yeah. I mean, I always equated it to if her voice was an actress, it would be Katharine Hepburn.
Yeah.
So
Hey, everybody out there. You are tuned into the Audiophiles mothership here. I am Andy, and that is John, and we discuss music. In particular, we discuss a song typically chosen by the other, except on Fridays when it's selected by y'all. One of us goes off and gives it a listen, and then we come back and give it a chat up. And today, John is going to be offering me something to go off and listen to, and I'm just jonesing to find out what I'm going to be served here. So, what do you have in store, John?
so long time coming, particularly in her work. It's Beth Gibbons, singer from Portishead, as
Yes,
we all
yes,
know. Um,
of
she
course.
has finally put out her debut solo album.
Oh,
So I've got a track from that, much anticipated. So this song is called "Floating on a Moment." Um, so scurry off and give it a listen and tell us what you think.
yeah, I'd be interested too. I'm really only familiar with her stuff, mostly familiar with her Portishead stuff. So, um, and I had no idea if she had done solo stuff since then. So it's interesting to hear that this is the first um sort of soiree into solo work that she's done in all these years, right? So cool. Yeah, I'd be happy to go check it out and then come back and let you know what I think. This weird little breathiness that's kind of like going panning from speaker to speaker here in my headphones is really interesting. And it's funny because breathiness is something that I it's one of the first words I would probably use to describe Beth Gibbons and sort of her vocal delivery, and in a weird twist of irony, she hasn't even started singing yet, right? It's just it fits her. So it's interesting that she's using it not in a part where she's singing, but where they're kind of building the song here. And there's this really interesting like syncopation to the like kind of like melody that the guitar is playing right now. I like it. It's interesting. Like I said, it's there's just a sense of curiosity about this already.
On the path with my restless curiosity beyond life before me, a passenger
It's pretty.
on no ordinary journey. It's one of a kind, won't get left behind.
Nice harmonies, like
I'm
layering of vocals.
floating on a moment, don't know how long. No one knows, no one can stay. All going to nowhere. All going, make no mistake.
Okay, so I'm guessing that what we just heard there was the chorus because it kind of like differentiated itself from what preceded it, and it also included, I believe, the floating on a moment was the first line. if I'm not mistaken. Um, and the bass comes in, and there's just this beautiful like plucking of strings. It's like almost harp-like in how it's being played. Um, and yeah, it kind of takes on a fuller sound and gives the song a little bit more life, though it doesn't make it sound any, you know, any less sort of melancholy or moody. It still has all of that. It's just a bit of a bolstering of the sound, which is nice, right? You need a little variance in your music. It can't be so like one note. But in the portion, the verse where it is a little bit pulled back, there are all these very interesting um bit players that do just this little ancillary sounds in the background. Um, and I like it. And I'm going to use the word that I used before that she then used moments later, but there's this curiosity to it all. It's all really interesting.
Without control, I'm heading toward a boundary that divides us, reminds us, traveling on a voyage where the living they have never been, have never seen. I'm floating on a moment, don't know how long. No one knows, no one can stay. All going to nowhere. All going.
This part, it sounds like, imagine she's like looking at of like a window pane, right? Like this glass window pane, and all those like ding ding ding, all that like little lovely plucking is like raindrops hitting the glass on the other side. I don't know why that's the visual I get, but John and I both do this where we'll create visuals to the sounds we're hearing for whatever reason. Because there is something cinematic about music. That's why there exist soundtracks, right? That's why great scenes in films have these either just instrumental bits that add to tension or whatever, or these big full songs that kind of capture a moment, vocals and all or whatever. But this is, even on the parts where it's just that scant music, it's just, I don't know, it's so evocative of like mood and feeling and even of images as I just illustrated. So, yeah, this is great. I also love the way that the harmony, there's all these different ways they're using harmonies throughout this, or multi-layer, multi-vocal tracks to just kind of like layer it and give it more texture. It's good. But they're, at the same time, she's hardly throwing the kitchen sink at this, right? The players uh in this track were very prudently selected, and where they were featured were very prudently selected, and I like that.
Making no mistake.
Like this.
Oh, trying but can't escape. All going to nowhere. Too afraid to be free.
what is that providing the melody there? Is that some sort of, I think it's keys, but they sound like they're programmed to sound like woodwinds almost. I don't know. Sort of the vibe I'm getting from them. But I love that little melody that features every so often. And now it sounds like we have yet another and different example of how harmonies are being used in this song, or these like um, you know, multi vocals. These sound, some of the O's earlier sounded like they could have been like co-ed, if you will, like men and women. This sounds almost, I don't know, like more feminine, or even dare I say childlike. I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna have to listen to them more. They literally had just started when I paused, but one more thing that caught my attention. Yeah, that's childlike. Those vocals. And that definitely sounded like some sort of flute or something. But I don't know if it was an actual flute or just something that was like patched in through keys. This is really, really pretty. Very haunting in its own right. I was kind of, she's talking about in a moment, all we have is here. And then you have these, like, that's her voice, and then you have these childlike vocals that are there, and it's like, I don't know. I don't know if this is true. It's just, it's my first listen to this, and this is complete supposition, but wouldn't it be interesting if she is speaking as herself now, and that those childlike uh vocals are some sort of symbol of her past, or like this a moment in her youth, right? As exemplified by childlike vocals, or brought to life through those childlike vocals. That would be an interesting, clever mechanism. You know what I mean? To employ. I don't know if that's the case. I'm just guessing that it might be a possibility. But there's got to be a reason why she chose that vocal styling for this portion or those lines of this song, whereas before in the song the harmonies that were provided weren't the same. They weren't these kind of like juvenile sounding voices providing them. I don't know. All conjecture and just stream of consciousness bullshitting that thoughts that I'm having right now, but just trying to throw stuff at the wall to see what sticks. But it was a really beautiful song. This was not an all hands on deck kitchen sink song. This was, judiciously selecting different ways and sounds and instruments to add texture at the right moment throughout the entirety of the song. Really loved that melody, that melodic through line toward the end, when you had that, those childlike vocals and her going back and forth. That sounded a little reedy to me, or a little flute like. Um, but yeah, this is really, really pretty. And again, I think another great word to describe it would be cinematic, or moody. Um, but yeah, this is looks to be more recent, if I'm not mistaken. So I haven't heard any of, like, outside of some stuff that's John's given me, and what I'm familiar with, from when she's in the band. I'm not that familiar with some of her later stuff, her more recent stuff. So maybe John could fill in the blanks for me a little bit on that and let me know about the tune and then some. Let's get back to him.
Nebuchadnezzar, he's back. So you've had to listen to Beth Gibbons, Floating on a Moment.
Yes.
What did you make of it all?
It was a enjoyable listen. There were shades of the musical decision making in Portishead, or the spirit of some Portishead songwriting a little bit in this, that I think you can pick up on. The less is more kind of mentality is definitely something that I've always respected from their stuff and enjoyed, and I think that there was a lot of this was dripping in that same mentality. So it's a very simple but pleasant guitar riff that is punctuated by the sound of like deep breaths, or what we get to kind of kick things off here. And then Beth begins singing in her signature sort of style. Again, breathy, airy kind of voice, with the occasional sounds of tinkling keys and other sort of like ancillary sounds that are peppered in for good measure. And this is something that is going to be a recurring theme throughout the song, where there are all these little like sonic additives that are laid in, very.
And the album as well.
Oh, well, then yeah, that makes sense. So I like that. It adds this, and I said this right before she would deliver a line that it contained this word, but there's this curiosity about it. And I think one of the first lines she says in the first verse is something about a curiosity. I'm like, well, that's all I'm filled with there's such an air of mystique and mystery to her music and their music in Portishead, that I always find it to be a very fascinating listen. So then just before the 1 minute mark, we get these airy harmonies, before the song shifts a bit into this motif that is led by these beautifully plucked strings. This would, I guess, become, or what I would come to realize, is the chorus. And this only lasts for a short time, this go around, before the song comes back into the earlier portion. And the song has this like somber pace and feel to it. It's slow, it's dark, and it's almost methodical in how it progresses, which gives this song like some interest, and again, some of that mystique that I was talking about. The sparse use of percussive instruments, I think, helps add to this sort of curious nature. It kind of like, I don't know, it takes a little bit of the structure out of it and gives it more of a flow a little bit. And there's the gentle strings that cascade over this curious music is so beautiful, and it's like a gentle rainfall against glass panes of the window. I imagine Beth like looking out of this window as the rain is hitting the other side of it. This is sort of the visuals that I get. Again, the song is very cinematic in its sound and feel. And just before the 3 minute marker is reached, we get more of these haunting ooh harmonies that underscore the mood of the song, or the moodiness of the song. And shortly after the 3:30 marker, she delivers the line, "Not that I don't want to return." And the song opens up a bit and takes a more ethereal sound, still bolstered by the plucking of those beautiful strings that are almost played like they almost, I know it's like a guitar, right? Or I'm like 99% sure it is, but it sounds like it's being played like a harp. Because it's got this sort of like, the way they're plucked so closely together gives it that sort of like the strings are harmonizing with one another.
So like a heavenly choir type sound.
Yes, and I think that adds to that ethereal thing that I was talking about earlier. And there's this high melody that joins in every so often, though I'm not sure. At first, I wasn't really sure what the instrument or instruments was providing that sound, but I think it's keys that are using an effect to make it sound like reedy, woodwind, fluty kind of instruments or something like that. But I love that little melodic through line that is peppered in every so often. And this progresses for a bit, and she says something to the effect of, "But all we have is here and now," which is followed by these childlike sounding group vocals. I mean, we just talked about Manchester, and this youthful sound to the choir that is added to this. And here you have her very much grown woman voice coupled with these childlike vocals that appear just now for the first time. All other of the multi-vocal track layering before this is either co-ed or like clearly grown adult, provided voices that are providing those harmonies. But this is different. This is different. And I have to.
It is children.
Yes, yeah. I was fairly certain of that. Though I was then was led to think, why? This is a decision. You were using this other style in the first 2/3, and now you're relying on this style. And she's talking about the here and the now and the then, and there's this reflective verbiage that's being used. And it almost is like her, the grown woman, talking to her, the child, or her youth that is represented by these vocals. That was my assumed situation, like it being a choice, and it feeling like, given the subject matter of what I caught from the lyrics, it seemed like it was a mechanism that was deployed intentionally and for that effect that I just mentioned. And as the song moves forward, towards the end, those childlike vocals are delivered in unison over top of that melodic motif I mentioned a moment ago, and which again I think are provided by keys of some variety meant to sound like a flute. And then a couple notes that resonate over the empty landscape of the track is what we get before the song comes to an end. And again, this is sort of like my synopsis a little bit here, but without knowing what the song was about, I found it to be melancholy and haunting, reflective and interesting, and it was assembled in such a seemingly methodical way. This was less all hands on deck and more about prudently selecting the right instruments for the job and the sounds to highlight or underscore the mood that you wanted to convey in this song. So yeah, let me know if I'm right on some of the assumptions I made about like sort of the decision making and why the children vocals were being used and all of that. It is very interesting, kind of mostly stripped back song that I really did enjoy. She's clearly still has it. I mean, we've listened to a collaboration by her, and we've listened to this, and those I think are pretty much the only two songs I have any experience in listening to that is like exposing me to her outside of Portishead. And yeah, she's still a wildly talented musician.
Yeah. I think what struck me about this is her voice hasn't really changed that much.
Yeah, yep.
Which is quite impressive.
Nor has her vocal style. Like her sound is there, and so is this sort of mysterious kind of a breathy approach that she has.
Yeah. I mean, I always equated it to if her voice was an actress, it would be Katharine Hepburn.
Yeah.
That anyway. So yeah, as you alluded to, we've already covered most of her career and everything in a previous episode where she did the track Mysteries with Rustin Man. And that was the last sort of output outside of Portishead, was a collaboration. So this is, finally a debut solo album. And it was released, it's called Lives Outgrown.
Mm-hmm.
And it was released in May 2024, so just a few weeks ago. So I will put a link into that episode. She's got more about her and going through in the process of Portishead and her, her YTS scheme and all that sort of stuff, and the other guys in the band. So this, she wrote this album actually over a decade. It took. I think she just did it when she was ready. But her life sort of got in the way as well. So topics included motherhood, anxiety, the menopause, and mortality. So she's kind of at a mid or post-mid life viewpoint, and there's some interesting quotes from her. She said she realized what life was like with no hope, and that was a sadness I'd never felt before. Before I had the ability to change my future, but when you're up against your body, you can't make it do something it doesn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that the album was directly influenced by the deaths of family and friends over the preceding several years. Again, the quote, people started dying, says Beth. When you're young, you never know the endings. You don't know how it's going to pan out. You think, we're going to get beyond this. It's going to get better. But some endings are hard to digest. So that's for the overall tone of the album. So you immediately know this is quite a thoughtful and moody album, as it were, reflective. And so it's not easy to digest in one listen. And so it's absolutely perfect for a reaction video. But it's a banging tune, and you got to, and you'll go back to this, I'm sure, and you'll just get more and more out of every time, because I have in the last few weeks, just more and more every single time I listen to it. The album itself, as you can imagine, critically acclaimed. It got a Metacritic score of 88, universal acclaim. There's some really interesting and for once quite perceptive comments from critics. So I'm going to include them here. Uncut wrote, Lives Outgrown is quite different prospect to Gibbons' previous work, more intimate, more personal, coloured by the grief and the goodbyes she had weathered in recent years. But it is still possible to find a thread that runs from here to Out of Season, the album she did with Rusted Man, and back to Portishead. And I think that's spot on, actually. I can actually see this as almost a companion piece to the track we listened to, Mysteries. And that song begins, God knows how I adore life. When the wind turns on the shores, lies another day. I cannot ask for more. And this is kind of her matured voice 22 years later from when that album was done, of the same sort of outlook, but weathered now by the loss, etc. And so apparently she had a really tough time with the menopause as well. So all of these things have really sort of worn out there. Wire called the album timeless and considered, and a complete but still complicated portrait of the intersection of grief and life. So all really sort of like heady stuff here. Slant magazine said detail-rich orchestra chamber pop back in a stunning exploration of aging and grief that is as captivating as it is devastating. And All Music described the album as being steeped in the emotional and physical realities of living long enough to bring life into the world and to see it leave, and concludes that Lives Outgrown reveals Gibbons' music is only getting richer as the years pass. It's really interesting thing to say that. I think the motherhood side of it has really covered her view as well. And I think it must do. I've obviously not experienced motherhood yet.
One of these days, John.
But not creating, life, but actually carrying it inside you probably gives you an even greater sense of mortality about what's going on around you. So yeah, really interesting. The album itself reached number 7 in the UK album charts, and obviously number 1 in the UK indie charts. So for this track, which was the first single, which actually came out preceding the album, we have Beth Gibbons, vocals and guitar, Lee Harris, ex Talk Talk, on drums. We know Rusted Man was from Talk Talk as well.
Yep. So there's obviously a good working relationship there.
Well, she was going to join them, remember, and then she went off and did Portishead instead. And James Ford, who is a member of the Last Shadow Puppets. He's also a producer to The Stars, and also Arctic Monkeys, Blur, Depeche Mode, Foals, Florence and the Machine, Gorillaz, and many, many more. So this guy knows his onions. And so he played on this track acoustic guitar, baritone guitar, bass, Hammond organ, hammered dulcimer, vibraphone, flute, recorders, drums, percussion, cello, double bass, and pedal steel.
Boy, did I really undersell his position in this song. I was like, yeah, it's probably patched in through some keys. He's like, no, I played all these things, man.
I mean, he could have learned the triangle as well. I mean, come on. Sanab Adekunle was backing vocals, and then for the children backing vocals, it just says Gracie, Herbie, and Roe, because obviously just they're just kids. So Gibbons wrote all songs on the album apart from 4, which she co-wrote with Harris. And Gibbons, Ford, and Harris produced the album. mostly Gibbons and Ford, and Harris sort of lent in where needed. So, lyrics of the song. On the path with my restless curiosity, beyond life, before me, a passenger on no ordinary journey. It's one of a kind, won't get left behind. And as you say, the chorus, I'm floating on a moment, don't know how long. No one knows, no one can stay. All going to nowhere, all going, make no mistake. Without control, I'm heading towards a boundary that divides us, reminds us. Traveling on a voyage where they're living, they have never been, have never seen. I'm floating on a moment, don't know how long. No one knows, no one can stay. All going to nowhere, all going, make no mistake. And that's the bridge bit. All trying but can't escape, all going to nowhere, too afraid to be free. And then, as you say, there's a bit too much on that. It's quite devastating. Not that I don't want to return. There's a bit of a break, and then, as you say, the children come in. So, not that I don't want to return, and they sing, "Or going to nowhere, to nowhere." Oh, honestly, it's not that I don't want to return or going to nowhere, to nowhere. It just reminds us, not that I don't want to return. It just reminds us that all we have is here and now, or going to nowhere, to nowhere. But all we have is here and now, or going to nowhere, to nowhere. All we have is here and now, or going to nowhere. It just reminds us all we have is here and now, or going to nowhere. But I have to say, very recently, I think, time flies, but I think 3, maybe 4 weeks ago, she did 2 tracks, including this one, live on Later, Jules Holland's. Absolutely stunning. But unfortunately, copyright prevented me from sharing it. But I urge you to go and have a look on YouTube and check it out, because it's
for sure.
really
I'm gonna listen to this again. I might as well use that as the
yeah. It's really good. Consequence website picked this as song of the week. And one of the things they wrote, which was quite interesting, they said, of course, the punchline is how pretty the song sounds, particularly that second half. Despite the darkness of the lyrics, the prancing bass line, glistening arpeggios, and Gibbons' delicate performance are paradoxically comforting. Squint, and you might find the song to be warm and uplifting. Look closer, though, and you'll wonder how you ever thought things were okay.
Yeah.
It's just it's that duality. Yeah. I am more impressed with this album every time I listen to it, honestly. It's really stunning. And I love her stuff. I'm a sucker for it. The stuff with Rusted Man, as we've spoken before, I absolutely adore as well. And all of Portishead. I truly believe that trip hop probably does Portishead a disservice. Trip hop really is Mass Attack and Tricky and then other bands. I think certain elements elevate Portishead to something else. And one of those elements is her vocals, and her delivery and performance on every track is something else, and out of nowhere as well. And then the genius of the other guys in the band, Udley and Darrow as well, just make it something else. And again, I've said before, and I'll say it again, they've written the best James Bond theme tune that's never made it to a James Bond film. You know, it's absolutely made for that sort of like All Mine. I'm talking about should have been a James Bond track. You know, it's just brilliant. So yeah, I adore them. I adore this. I think it's a great song. It's interesting how she's sort of changed her tack in terms of what she's writing about now, and mortality and this reflective quality. Because it seemed like a lot of Portishead songs were almost mini scripts to films, and they were almost episodic. This is the story about what's going on in this song, whereas these are more a general reflection.
And yet still that quality of writing a song that sounds like it's meant to be cinematic, like you had said. It's still you still feel that in these songs. Or I shouldn't say that. I've only listened to this one, but I got that vibe from this track. And if that's something that you are saying is something that you'll catch throughout the rest of the album, then all the more reason to probably go out and check it out.
Yeah, it's a great album. And I think it just gets better with every listen. It's not easily defined in one listen.
Mhm.
And it sort of opens up to you its secrets one at a time. As all good
Quite
things
dark
do.
secrets, or just a peek into some pretty morbid, dark thoughts, like the whole thought about mortality and your life or your body betraying you and stuff like that. It's a hard pill to swallow, you know what I mean? And you can't write those kind of songs when you're fucking, between 20
21.
and 35 or whatever, you know what I mean? No one wants to hear that shit, you know what I mean? You're supposed to be
Well,
writing about heartache and, hard and partying and all that stuff or whatever, but not about, something that, a 55-year-old person would better have a grasp of.
yeah, if you're writing about that at 22, that's tragic in
Yeah,
all
that
senses
is.
of the word. It's really tragic. Right. Well, I will wrap things up. Thanks for listening to this, Andy. And folks out there, tell us what you think of this song. Please hit the like button if you do like this and drop comments. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us what you think if you've listened to the album. We would love to hear your thoughts. Fans of Beth Gibbons' work out there, let yourselves be known.
Say
Or
it
not,
loud,
as
say
the
it
case
proud.
may be. Yeah. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do consider it. We'd love to have you on board, and we really appreciate everybody who supports the channel and helps us grow. That being said, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see all of you on the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.